Next quarter, maybe. My name's Jared Monroe. I'm 29 years old, and I've heard those 3 words from my boss Denise Callahan more times than I care to count. 4 years at Wireline Consulting in Portland, and every time I brought up a raise, she found a new way to dance around it. I sat across from her in her corner office watching her flip through budget reports she probably hadn't read. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across her face. She was 41, sharp-dressed, and had perfected the art of looking busy while saying nothing useful. The company's priorities have shifted, she continued, not looking up from the papers. We need to be strategic about compensation adjustments right now. Strategic, her favorite word when she meant no. I'd been handling the Peterson Industries account for 2 years, brought in $3 million in revenue last year alone. My performance reviews were spotless. My client retention rate was 96%, but somehow there was never money in the budget for me. I understand, I said, keeping my voice level. Can we set a specific timeline for when this might be revisited? She finally looked up, her expression shifting to something between annoyance and condescension. Jared, you need to think about the bigger picture here. We're all making sacrifices. I nodded and left her office. Walked past the reception desk where Kelly was booking appointments, past the conference room where junior consultants were preparing presentations, past my own cubicle with its stack of client files and half-empty coffee cup. In the parking garage, I sat in my Honda Civic for 10 minutes before starting the engine. The concrete walls felt like they were closing in. 4 years of loyal service, and I was making the same salary as when I started. Meanwhile, Denise had gotten 2 promotions and a company car. That evening, I opened my laptop and updated my resume for the first time in years, just to see what was out there. Just to remind myself that other companies existed beyond these gray walls and recycled excuses. The job boards were full of opportunities. Senior positions at firms that actually valued experience. Companies that promoted from within instead of hiring their boss's nephew for management roles. I bookmarked a few postings but didn't apply. Not yet. 3 days later, Denise walked past my desk and dropped a stack of reports without making eye contact. The Peterson Industries file was on top, marked with a yellow sticky note. Handle the renewal negotiations. Make sure they understand our value proposition. Our value proposition. Right. Because I wasn't worth a cost of living adjustment, but I was worth closing million-dollar deals. I picked up the phone to call Peterson Industries, but something felt different, like a switch had been flipped. For the first time in 4 years, I started wondering what would happen if I just stopped caring about Denise Callahan's approval. I joined Wireline Consulting straight out of graduate school. Back then, the company felt different, smaller, more personal. The founder, Harrison Wireline, still walked the halls and knew everyone's name. He'd hired me personally after a 2-hour conversation about market analysis and strategic positioning. You've got instincts, he'd told me. That's harder to teach than spreadsheet formulas. 6 months later, Harrison sold the company to a private equity firm and retired to his ranch in Montana. The new ownership brought in fresh management, including Denise Callahan, who'd been hired from a competitor to modernize operations and maximize efficiency. Her first day, she'd called an all-hands meeting and talked about right-sizing the organization and optimizing human capital. I should have known then that employees had become line items on a balance sheet. The early years weren't terrible. Denise gave me challenging assignments and I delivered results. When I landed the Peterson Industries account, she'd actually smiled and said I had potential for advancement. That was back when I still believed advancement meant something other than more work for the same pay. My parents had raised me to keep my head down and work hard. My dad spent 37 years at the same manufacturing plant in Ohio, earning every promotion through persistence and loyalty. Companies reward dedication, he used to say. Stick it out, and they'll take care of you. But Wireline wasn't taking care of anyone except the partners. I watched 3 talented analysts leave for better opportunities while Denise hired cheaper replacements fresh out of college. The office atmosphere shifted from collaborative to competitive. People stopped sharing ideas and started hoarding information. The warning signs had been there for months. Denise stopped including me in strategy meetings. She'd assign projects to newer hires instead of me, claiming it was developmental opportunities for the team. When I brought concerns to her attention, she'd dismiss them with phrases like, "That's not your focus area," or "Let's stay in our lane." Last month, I'd overheard her on a conference call talking about legacy employees who were resistant to change. I wasn't mentioned by name, but the description fit. 4 years of experience apparently made me legacy. 4 years of bringing in revenue apparently made me resistant. The Peterson Industries renewal was worth $4 million over 2 years. If I closed it successfully, Veraline would pocket a healthy commission, and Denise would probably get another bonus. I'd get a pat on the head, and maybe a gift card to the company cafe. My college roommate Tyler worked at Northglen Analytics across town. Over beers last weekend, he'd mentioned their expansion plans and their need for experienced consultants. "They're paying market rate," he'd said casually, "plus equity participation, real equity, not just employee stock purchase plans." Market rate. What a concept. That night, I'd looked up Northglen Analytics online. Their employee reviews mentioned competitive compensation, professional development, and management that actually listened to ideas. It sounded too good to be true, which probably meant it was exactly what I needed. The moment everything changed happened on a Tuesday morning in October. I was reviewing quarterly projections when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Jared Monroe, this is Marcus Weller from Northglen Analytics. Tyler Mitchell suggested I give you a call." My heart rate spiked. Marcus Weller was a name everyone in Portland consulting knew. He'd built Northglen's client base from scratch and had a reputation for treating employees like actual human beings instead of profit centers. "I've been following your work with Peterson Industries," Marcus continued. "Impressive client retention numbers. We're expanding our strategic consulting division and looking for someone with your background." I glanced around the office. Denise was in her glass-walled conference room, gesticulating at a presentation slide. Kelly was fielding angry calls from a client whose project had been botched by one of the junior consultants. The copier was jamming again, and nobody had bothered to fix it for 3 weeks. "I'd be interested in learning more," I said, keeping my voice low. "Excellent. How about Thursday at 2 p.m.? We can discuss the position and our compensation structure." Compensation structure, not budget constraints or company priorities. An actual discussion about what I was worth. After hanging up, I sat at my desk feeling something I hadn't experienced in months. Excitement. Not just about the possibility of leaving, but about the recognition that I had value. That my skills and experience meant something to someone. Thursday couldn't come fast enough. I scheduled a personal day, telling Kelly I had a doctor's appointment. It wasn't technically a lie. My career needed medical attention. The Northglen Analytics office was everything Veraline wasn't. Modern furniture, natural lighting, and an actual coffee machine instead of the vending machine swill we'd been drinking for years. Marcus Weller met me in the lobby personally. No assistant or HR screening. Just a firm handshake and genuine interest in what I had to say. The interview lasted 2 hours. We discussed strategy, client management, and market positioning. Marcus asked thoughtful questions about my approach to problem solving and listened to my answers without checking his phone or glancing at his watch. "The position comes with a 30% salary increase," he said finally, "plus performance bonuses tied to actual revenue generation, not arbitrary quarterly goals." 30%. In one conversation, Marcus Weller had offered me more career advancement than Denise Callahan had provided in 4 years. I drove back to Veraline in a daze. The building looked smaller somehow, its gray concrete facade reflecting the dreary October sky. Inside, nothing had changed. The copier was still broken. Kelly was still fielding complaints. Denise was still in her office, probably practicing new ways to say no to employee requests. But I had changed. For the first time since joining Veraline Consulting, I knew exactly what I was worth. And I knew Denise Callahan wasn't willing to pay it. The only question was whether I had the courage to do something about it. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzling. Typical Portland October weather. I'd spent the weekend thinking about Marcus Weller's offer, running scenarios in my head, weighing loyalty against self-respect. By Sunday night, I'd made my decision. I was going to give Denise one last chance. She was already in her office when I arrived at 8 a.m., coffee cup in hand, scrolling through emails with her usual expression of practiced irritation. I knocked on her doorframe and waited for her to look up. "What can I do for you, Jared?" "I'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss my compensation package. It's been over a year since my last review, and I think it's time we addressed my salary." She set down her coffee cup and leaned back in her chair. "I thought we covered this last month. The budget situation hasn't changed." "Actually, it has. I've been researching market rates for senior consultants in Portland. I'm currently earning 23% below industry standard for someone with my experience and track record. I'd done my homework, printed out salary surveys, compiled data from 3 different sources, even reached out to former colleagues at other firms. The numbers didn't lie, even if Denise preferred to ignore them. "Market rates are inflated," she said dismissively. "Companies are overpaying to attract talent, but it's not sustainable. We prefer to invest in long-term stability rather than chase arbitrary benchmarks." Long-term stability. Another way of saying they wanted to underpay employees who were too loyal to leave. "Denise, I've generated over $12 million in revenue for this company over the past 4 years. The Peterson Industries account alone covers my salary for 3 years. I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for fair compensation based on performance." Her expression hardened. "Jared, I'm going to be direct with you. This company has invested significant resources in your development, training, mentorship, professional opportunities. The return on that investment comes through continued service, not salary demands." Salary demands. As if asking for market rate compensation was some kind of hostile takeover attempt. "I understand the company's investment," I said carefully. "But development opportunities don't pay my student loans or cover my rent. I need a clear timeline for advancement, both in terms of responsibilities and compensation." Denise stood up and walked to her window, looking out at the parking lot where my Honda Civic sat next to her leased BMW. "You know what your problem is, Jared? You're not thinking strategically, you're focused on short-term gains instead of long-term career building. What exactly does long-term career building look like here? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like 4 more years of the same conversations." She turned back to face me, her voice dropping to the tone she used with difficult clients. "Maybe we need to reassess whether your expectations align with this company's culture. Some people thrive in environments that prioritize team success over individual recognition. Others need constant validation and external motivation." The implication was clear. I was being labeled as high maintenance, someone who didn't understand team dynamics. It was a classic management technique. Frame legitimate concerns as character flaws. "I'm not looking for validation," I said. "I'm looking for compensation that reflects my contribution to this company's success. And I'm telling you that's not possible right now. If that's unacceptable to you, then maybe you need to consider whether this is the right fit for your career goals." There it was, the veiled threat. Shape up or ship out, delivered with corporate politeness but unmistakable intent. She was calling my bluff, betting that I wouldn't actually leave, that I was too comfortable, too risk-averse, too invested in the status quo to make a real change. "I appreciate your honesty," I said, standing up. "I'll need some time to think about what you've said." "Take all the time you need. But remember, Jared, good opportunities are rare. Don't let unrealistic expectations blind you to what you already have." I left her office feeling like I'd been dismissed from the principal's office. Not fired, but made to feel small and ungrateful. Like wanting fair pay was a character defect rather than a reasonable expectation. That afternoon I called Marcus Weller and accepted his offer. The North Glen Analytics employment agreement arrived via email Wednesday morning. As I read through the terms, I realized just how badly I'd been undervalued at Wireline. The salary increase was substantial, but the benefits package was what really opened my eyes. Full health coverage with no employee contribution. Professional development budget of $5,000 annually. Equity participation starting after 6 months. Flexible work arrangements. Paid conference attendance. These weren't revolutionary perks, just standard offerings at companies that actually wanted to retain talent. I'd grown so accustomed to Veerline's bare minimum approach that I'd forgotten what proper employee treatment looked like. Denise had normalized inadequacy by framing basic benefits as unrealistic expectations. That evening, I signed the agreement and scheduled my start date for the following Monday. 2 weeks' notice was standard, but given Denise's reaction to my compensation request, I doubted she'd make my departure pleasant. Thursday morning, I drafted my resignation letter, professional, concise, expressing gratitude for opportunities while stating my intention to pursue new challenges. I printed it on company letterhead, ironic considering I was using Wireline resources to announce my departure from Wireline. Friday morning, I planned to submit the letter and begin my transition process, but Denise beat me to the punch. "Jared, can you come to my office, please?" Kelly's voice over the intercom sounded unusually formal. When the receptionist used full sentences instead of casual communication, it usually meant management was involved. I walked to Denise's office carrying my resignation letter, figuring this would save time. She was seated behind her desk with a folder open in front of her, wearing the expression she reserved for delivering bad news to clients. "Close the door and have a seat." I sat down, resignation letter still in my hand. "I've been thinking about our conversation Monday," she began, "about your expectations and this company's direction. I've also been reviewing your recent activity." Recent activity. That phrase made my stomach drop. I received an interesting call yesterday from a colleague at Northglen Analytics. Apparently they've been recruiting from our staff. Specifically, they mentioned interviewing a Wireline employee for a senior consulting position. My mouth went dry. Someone at Northglen had talked, either deliberately or accidentally, but the information had made its way back to Denise. "Now, I'm not accusing anyone of anything," she continued, though her tone suggested otherwise. "But I think we need to have an honest conversation about loyalty and professional conduct." I set the resignation letter on her desk. "Actually, we do." She glanced down at the paper, then back up at me. "What's this?" "My resignation letter. I've accepted a position at Northglen Analytics effective 2 weeks from today." Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession: surprise, anger, betrayal, and finally cold calculation. "You interviewed with them while employed here?" "I did, on my personal time using my own resources." "After I specifically told you that your expectations didn't align with our company culture?" "You told me to consider whether this was the right fit for my career goals." "I did exactly that." Denise leaned back in her chair, studying me like I was a puzzle she couldn't solve. "This is incredibly disappointing, Jared. After everything we've invested in your career, you're walking away for what? A few $1,000s more per year. A few $1,000s. She didn't even know the actual numbers, but she was prepared to minimize them anyway. "This isn't about money," I said, though it partially was. "It's about being valued, about working somewhere that sees employee development as an investment rather than an expense." "And you think Northglen is going to be different?" "They're our direct competitor, Jared. They recruited you specifically to gain access to our client information and business strategies." There it was, the accusation I'd been expecting. Corporate espionage disguised as career advancement. "That's a serious accusation," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Are you suggesting I'm planning to steal company secrets?" Denise's smile was thin and calculated. "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm stating that your decision to work for a direct competitor raises legitimate concerns about confidentiality and professional ethics." She was building a case, not for legal action, but for character assassination. If she couldn't keep me from leaving, she'd make sure my departure looked as unprofessional as possible. "All company information stays with the company," I said. "That's standard practice, and it's what I intend to do. Nevertheless, I think it's best for everyone if we expedite your departure. Consider this your last day." I'd expected this. Denise wasn't going to let me work 2 more weeks, potentially gathering information or influencing other employees. She wanted me gone immediately before I could do any perceived damage. I understand. I'll clear out my desk and return company property. Kelly will observe while you pack your personal items. Your access to company systems has already been revoked, and your key card will be deactivated at the end of the business day. Standard protocol for terminated employees, even though I'd resigned voluntarily. She was treating my departure like a security breach rather than a career transition. I stood up to leave, but Denise wasn't finished. One more thing, Jared. I'll be contacting Marcus Weller personally to discuss your employment history here. Professional references are important, and I want to make sure he has accurate information about your performance and conduct. There it was. The threat disguised as professional courtesy. She was going to try to sabotage my new position before it even started. That's your prerogative, I said. I'm confident my work speaks for itself. We'll see. 20 minutes later, I was loading a cardboard box into my Honda Civic under Kelly's watchful supervision. 4 years of career building reduced to a few personal items. Coffee mug, desk plant, framed photo of my parents, and a stack of industry publications I'd bought with my own money. The other employees watched the ritual with familiar resignation. They'd seen this performance before with previous departures. Denise had turned resignation into theater, complete with security escort and implied wrongdoing. As I drove out of the parking garage, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Not just about leaving Verline, but about having the decision made for me. Denise had eliminated any possibility of guilt or second thoughts by treating my departure as betrayal rather than business. That afternoon, I called Marcus Weller to explain the situation. She terminated you for resigning? He asked, sounding genuinely surprised. Technically, she expedited my departure date, but yes, effectively I was fired for giving notice. Well, that's unfortunate for her, and fortunate for us. Can you start Monday instead of next week? Absolutely. Good. And Jared? Denise Callahan called here an hour ago. Wanted to discuss your performance issues and professional conduct concerns. I told her we'd conducted our own thorough evaluation and were confident in our hiring decision. I almost laughed. Denise had moved fast, but Marcus had moved faster. Her attempt at sabotage had backfired into confirmation that I'd made the right choice. Thank you for that. Thank you for handling a difficult situation professionally. That tells me more about your character than any reference call ever could. Friday evening, I sat in my apartment reviewing the North Glen Analytics Employee Handbook. Comprehensive benefits, clear advancement criteria, transparent performance evaluation process. Everything that Verline claimed to offer, but never delivered. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. Heard through the grapevine that you're joining the team. Welcome to a company that actually pays people what they're worth. What they're worth. Such a simple concept, yet apparently revolutionary in Denise Callahan's world. 6 weeks into my tenure at North Glen Analytics, Marcus Weller called me into his office with an interesting proposition. Peterson Industries is looking to switch consulting firms, he said, sliding a folder across his desk. Apparently their current provider isn't meeting expectations. Peterson Industries, my former account at Wireline, the $4 million client I'd managed for 2 years. They specifically requested you, Marcus continued. Seems they weren't impressed with the transition after your departure. I opened the folder and found emails between Peterson's CEO and Wireline management. The correspondence painted a clear picture. Declining service quality, missed deadlines, and communication breakdowns. Denise had assigned the account to Jennifer Walsh, a junior consultant with 6 months of experience. What kind of proposal are they looking for? Full strategic consulting package, market analysis, competitive positioning, operational efficiency review. Basically everything you used to handle for them, plus expansion into digital transformation services. The contract value was $6.8 million over 3 years. Not just the Peterson Industries business, but an expanded relationship that would establish North Glen as their primary strategic partner. There's one more thing, Marcus said. They want to announce the partnership change at their quarterly board meeting. Public statement about choosing a consulting firm that values both client success and employee development. Client success and employee development. A direct reference to the circumstances of my departure from Wireline. I spent the next week preparing the most comprehensive proposal of my career. Market research, strategic frameworks, implementation timelines, and success metrics. Everything Peterson Industries needed to justify their decision and establish clear expectations for results. The presentation meeting was scheduled for Thursday afternoon in Peterson's downtown conference room. Clean sight lines to the river, natural lighting, and enough space for their 8-person leadership team. 30 minutes into my presentation, Peterson's CEO interrupted with a question I'd been expecting. Jared, help us understand the transition process. How do we move from our current consulting relationship to North Glen without disrupting ongoing projects? Seamless transition is our specialty, I replied. We'll coordinate directly with Wireline to ensure continuity, assuming they're willing to cooperate professionally. The CEO smiled. Given recent service issues, I doubt cooperation will be their priority. But we appreciate your diplomatic approach. After 2 hours of detailed discussion, Peterson Industries signed the agreement. Effective immediately, North Glen Analytics became their strategic consulting partner, replacing Wireline Consulting and expanding the relationship beyond anything I'd been authorized to offer in my previous role. The announcement hit the Portland business community the following Monday. Peterson Industries issued a press release praising North Glen Analytics for their innovative approach to strategic consulting and commitment to both client success and professional excellence. Local business journals picked up the story, noting that Peterson's decision represented the largest consulting contract change in Portland's recent history. More significantly, it established North Glen as a legitimate competitor to established firms like Wireline. I was reviewing quarterly projections when Tyler stopped by my desk with a coffee and a knowing grin. Heard from anyone at your old company lately? Not directly, but Kelly sent a text saying Denise has been locked in meetings with senior management all week. Can't imagine why. Losing Peterson Industries meant more than revenue impact for Wireline. It signaled to other clients that the company's service quality had declined. Within a month, 2 smaller accounts had also terminated their contracts, citing concerns about account management stability. The following quarter, Wireline announced organizational restructuring and cost reduction measures. Denise Callahan's position was eliminated as part of the strategic realignment of leadership responsibilities. I felt no satisfaction in her termination, just quiet recognition that actions have consequences. She treated employee development as optional and client relationships as guaranteed. Both assumptions had proven costly. My parents visited Portland that spring, proud to see me thriving in a role that valued my contributions. Over dinner, my dad asked about the transition from Wireline. Sometimes you have to walk away from what's comfortable to find what's right, I told him. He nodded, understanding that loyalty works both ways. These days, I manage strategic partnerships for clients who respect expertise and companies that invest in their people. Simple concept, but apparently worth fighting for. Some lessons cost more than others to learn.